Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for taking the time to hear this testimony this evening. My name is Dave Wallace. I'm the CEO of Wallace Redevelopment Partners. We are the master developer that has been selected and contracted with the City of Joplin as it relates to the overall rebuild. This truly is a public-private partnership. We obviously are the private sector partner working with the city. On behalf of the leadership of the City of Joplin and on behalf of the 50,150 residents that call Joplin home, we hope and we pray that nobody in the state of Missouri, nobody in the United States ever has to endure and experience what the residents of Joplin did on May 22nd of 2011. But I think we have to also look at this as a lesson learned, as it relates to best practices. And what this legislation basically provides for is us trying to create economic development tools that, God forbid, this happens again, that another community in the state of Missouri can use in their economic development toolbox as they continue to redevelop. This House Bill 158 supplements existing Missouri TIF and museum district laws that basically make it easier for communities with a disaster area to take advantage of these incentives under both statutes. Representative Flanagan just talked about the fact that you had 1/3 of a community that was devastated and wiped out. Over 100 or 161 deaths, over 500 businesses, and the one that is staggering, 18,000 vehicles destroyed in a matter of minutes. And from the beginning, the leadership and the volunteers and the citizens of Joplin basically became the standard bearer as it relates to search and rescue, as it relates to debris removal, recovery, and now redevelopment. The leadership of Joplin has been phenomenal in the things that they have done. There are a number of communities that effectively sit back and wait for development, whether it's through a disaster or not, wait for development to come to the table. And in the city of Joplin, the leadership could have done that, but basically they reached out and through this public-private partnership worked with the citizens, with the CART, the Recovery Committee, basically determining what the citizens wanted to see in this community and effectively putting together a master plan. We worked with the community, we worked with the leadership, and basically determined what were those assets that were lost on the private sector, what were those assets that were lost on the public sector, and looking into the future, what are those capital improvement plan assets that the community was looking for. And we as a private sector developer sat down with the leadership and said, let's move forward as to how we can put these development plans in place. We effectively have isolated about $1.9 billion of projects as it relates to the redevelopment of Joplin. What we have rolled out thus far is about $800 million of these projects. That represents about 19 discrete projects. You heard Representative Flanagan talk about a library, a movie theater, single-family homes, assisted living, independent living, medical office, loft-over retail, grocery stores. All of these are assets that we're looking to move forward with. In fact, last night, the City Council unanimously passed a resolution to build the first library/theater in American history in one building, and a shared use of public-private partnership where you have cash flow from the private sector that basically is paying off public sector debt. And it truly is a public-private partnership that we're focusing on. These assets will have a significant economic impact on the local community. And one of these assets, just one alone that we're working on, that with the passage of this legislation will be helpful, that has a $50 million a year economic impact on the city of Joplin. On any community, $50 million is a significant impact on the city of Joplin. That is incredible. As the master developer, we look for sustainability. We're not just in this to develop a project and be done. Many of the senior leadership within our organization have served on the public sector, have served as economic development directors, have served as assistant city managers. I was a 3-term mayor in my community, and while I was mayor, we did over $3 billion of public-private partnerships just in real estate alone. And I have to tell you that use of a TIF, tax increment financing, was used in many of those cases. That was on the public sector. Our organization has a number of communities that we focus on from a private sector. And again, we've used TIF. And what we have found as we're moving forward is that the revenue streams, whether it was rental income that an individual was paying, or whether it was rental income that perhaps a doctor's office was paying, is not sufficient to build back with a replacement cost for many of the assets that were lost. We have individuals that were paying $500 a month in rent, and you cannot build back a house that they were living in that was 50 years old, 60 years old, to be able to pay the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Long and short of it, the tornado priced many people out of their homes. And with this TIF legislation, what we're focusing on are ways that we can get people back into their homes. On December 28th, the City Council in Joplin, with an effective date of January 1st of this year, passed the local TIF. It's the largest TIF in Missouri history. It's 3,100 acres. That gives you any indication of the size of the devastation that's there. The growth in asset value, many of these assets that would not occur if it were not for the TIF, will be able to secure roughly $42 million in that overall capital structure just for the first $800 million of projects. With the passage of this legislation, it's anticipated about another $17 million. If you add that up, that's roughly $60 million of TIF capital that would be able to be available for roughly $800 million of these projects. So, ladies and gentlemen, special circumstances require special legislation. A TIF for a devastating disaster zone is different than what you traditionally think of with a TIF. This is not just using capital to build back a retail strip center and be done with it. What we have here is we are rebuilding the heart and soul of a community. We're rebuilding schools. In the TIF plan, we have $13 million going to the Joplin School District. We're building infrastructure, cultural assets, city amenities, many of these assets that do not generate tax revenues. So with this TIF revenue, obviously, we are also building other assets that are increasing that increment. And the bottom line with this specific legislation is that it creates new assets and new revenues that creates a new increment that we can capitalize. And the local TIF, as I mentioned, is projected to be roughly $42 million. The state, if it's passed, would bring in about another $17 million. And but for this disaster recovery legislation, I can tell you that many of these projects will not move forward. I'm sure that Brian Head, who is the city attorney for the city of Joplin, will share with you exactly what Representative Flanagan said. Every single taxing district in this county has signed off and basically given letters of support in connection with the local TIF. And for those of you that have been involved in TIFs, even the school district has been involved. So we have every single one that has been in support. The long and short of it, we've got all of these taxing jurisdictions. We've got the local leadership, we've got the citizens all standing shoulder to shoulder as it relates to rebuilding Joplin. And we would ask for your support and ask you to stand shoulder to shoulder with us as well. And with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Brian Head, the city attorney.
Proceed, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. We really appreciate the opportunity to have this in front of you